Dear ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank the Women's Forum for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here speaking to you this morning. I grew up with the expectation that when one receives a lot, one has to give back a lot, and this has marked me deeply. Chiara very kindly mentioned this family tradition in her introduction. My grandparents and my parents passed on to me the importance of the values of sharing and the happiness of giving when nothing can be expected in return other than a smile. My education has greatly influenced my choices. I believe that this made me want to dedicate my life to serving others, especially those in extremely fragile situations. It's indeed because I wanted to get involved in the humanitarian field that I studied political science in Geneva. Like Chiara said, as chance would have it, I met my future husband during my studies. Since my marriage in 1981, I have been aware of the privilege that it is to be in this position. That is why I have wanted to be a voice for those who are not heard, whether they live in Luxembourg or elsewhere around the globe. This has often led me to fight for difficult causes. If I had to choose 3 key dates for my action, I would choose the following 3. In 1997, when I became Goodwill Ambassador for UNESCO, Federico Mayor, who was Director General at the time, asked me what causes I wanted to champion. My immediate reaction was the fight against poverty, especially amongst women. He looked at me with a smile and said, "I'm sending you to Bangladesh to meet my dear friend, Mohammed Yunus." In 1998, my first encounter with Professor Yunus was a revelation to me. The notion of poverty being inevitable had always revolted me. The only way that I had heard of alleviating it was through charity. Professor Yunus instead demonstrated that microcredits are an effective tool to support women so that they can look to their own survival, find a way out of their precarious existence, and become independent and agents of change. Microcredits break the cycle of poverty and restore the dignity to millions of women. Since this encounter, the Nobel Peace Prize winner has been a continuous source of inspiration for my action in promoting inclusive finance and social business. The second very important moment for me started in the 1980s during a conference of the Fondation pour l'Enfance here in Paris, to which I was invited to by Anne-Émone Giscard d'Estaing. I heard 2 humanitarian workers talking about the fate of children between the ages of 10 and 18 who were incarcerated for minor crimes in African prisons. After having looked for more information on the situation and having found none, I decided to visit a prison in Burundi to discover the facts. That is how I found myself in the central prison of Bujumbura in 2009. There, I saw with my own eyes what these children were going through. Some had AIDS and did not receive any medical care. As a mother, but also as UNICEF Eminent Advocate for Children, I was horrified to discover these young boys who were holding my hand, telling me how totally forsaken they were, and begging me to get them out. I can assure you that I did not sleep very much in the following weeks. I was determined to get them out of that hell. Thanks to a dear friend, Maggie Barankitse, who is also called and known as the Angel of Burundi, for saving more than 1,000 Hutu and Tutsi children during the genocide in the early 90s, we started a project called La Main Tendue in 2010. Within 4 years, and we never dreamt in our wildest dreams that we would be able to do this, within 4 years, we succeeded in freeing the 600 underage children imprisoned throughout the country. Because of the situation in Burundi, Maggie has had to flee into exile in neighboring Rwanda, as many others. I continue my action with her to ensure that children do not fall into the clutches of armed militias that spread terror in the Great Lakes region. One last marking moment happened 2 years ago in Luxembourg. In 2016, I organized through my foundation an international forum on learning disabilities. This forum was a success because it triggered an awareness in Luxembourg that in the face of children's and parents' distress, something had to be done for those suffering from learning disabilities such as dyslexia, dyspraxia, attention deficit, and many others. As a mother, I found myself very helpless when my son Louis' dyslexia was discovered. I am very impressed that he had the courage to talk openly about this during the forum. I could have avoided much suffering for my son had we known sooner and received adequate support at an early stage. My heart went out to the many other children and parents who did not receive the help they needed. Since the conference, there has been a great momentum on this issue, and a few weeks ago, I had the joy of inaugurating the National Learning Development Center. This is a big step in my country for the children and for their parents. So today, a new momentum has started. It began when I first met Dr. Denis Mukwege after a conference he held in Luxembourg in 2016. I am sure you all know him because he, together with Nadia Mourad, has won this year's Peace Nobel Prize for their efforts to end the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war and armed conflict. After his conference that moved me deeply, I asked him how I could help the victims. He replied that he had just created a group of survivors, and he asked me to give them a platform. I decided then, with the help of my foundation, to hold a conference in my country to give the survivors a voice. They will be at the heart of this conference entitled Stand, Speak, Rise Up, which will take place in Luxembourg on the 26th and 27th of March 2019, with the support of our government. And I am particularly happy to announce this here today. I'm also very pleased and grateful that the Women's Forum is helping my foundation organize this conference. I sincerely hope that it will mark an important step in the fight against the use of rape as a weapon of war. Rape as a weapon of war and submission is not new. It is the scale of it, and it is the fact that this crime, which has already claimed millions of victims throughout the 20th century, continues to be perpetuated on a large scale in the 21st century. My thoughts are with the thousands of rape victims in Libya, Syria, Myanmar, and the Great Lakes region of Africa, to name only a few. That is why indignation is no longer enough. We can no longer close our eyes or keep quiet about the suffering that women endure. We cannot help but feel revolted about what is happening in war zones and refugee camps, where thousands of women are struggling on a daily basis against rape and sexual slavery. I cannot get the following sentence that a victim once told me out of my head. We Congolese women don't have access to the internet, and we don't make the front covers of your newspapers. But every time you hear about sexual abuse in your countries, think of us. We must pass from emotion to action. These women want to stand up. They want to speak against sexual violence and impunity, which has unfortunately become the norm in fragile environments. But they will not be able to do so on their own. To rise up, they need our solidarity to raise and amplify their voices, share their need for recognition and justice, and spread their message of peace. I am convinced that by putting them at the center of attention, they can transform themselves from victims to powerful agents of change and of peace. That is what I stand for, and that is one of the great objectives of this conference. This will be their conference. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Mukwege has said, to rape a woman is to rape our humanity. It is not only your sense of solidarity that I am appealing to today, but it is also our collective responsibility. Just as our passivity has consequences on the lives of millions of human beings in the world, our involvement will have a considerable impact. It is never too late to make a difference. Thank you very much for your attention.
Madame, you just remind that you'll be in Burundi and in many other countries because you like to be on the ground and to feed, to see what happens, to find the solutions. You're just coming back from the camps in Lebanon. Maybe you can share the experience, and I think we have a small video showing what you really did on the ground. Will you tell us your experience?
Yes, yeah, with pleasure. Well, I think that it was very moving to see the number of refugees that is very high in Lebanon, the difficulty that they have to find solutions of survival, the difficult situation they're living in, and the courage of these women who try in every way to find means to send their children to school and to fight for survival. I think the important thing is that, as I was saying before, the position that I have the chance of being in gives me the possibility of giving visibility to problems, of being there and being a bridge between them and our world, where very often it's difficult for their voice to be heard if there isn't someone who can speak in their name, who can attract a bit of attention. So I'm very grateful to be that trait d'union, like you say in French.
Yeah, and for your forum on 26 and 27 of March, you also have 3 Nobel Prizes at your sites, maybe a 4th one if we can. And I hope that all the community of the Women's Forum will be sensibilized to such courageous and difficult cause. Not popular, it's true, but you say you will never see that happen again. Then I would really like to tell you in your name of all that you can count on the support, fully support of the Women's Forum to make this forum not a success, but the way to make it never happen again.